Hey, welcome back to our channel. Today we have our special guest slash friend, Christine O'Donnell. If you watch our channel, you probably already know her. She's the founder and executive director of Show Up Gallery, previously known as the Beacon Gallery. And in the last couple of years, we've produced together 5 videos on how to price your art, how to work with the art gallery, artivism, also AI and art. So today we are going to talk about her transformation from running a for-profit art gallery to a non-profit organization. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened? Why did you decide to turn Beacon Gallery into a non-profit?
Super excited to be here. Thank you for having me again, Mo. Beacon Gallery had always had a side of it that was focused on social impact. And back in 2019, I actually formed the entity that is Show Up today with an intention of working on projects that didn't seem to fit the purview of Beacon Gallery, our artist in residence program, and other alternative projects, whatever crazy ideas I came up with, which I'm coming up with fun ideas every day. But I really couldn't give it the focus that I wanted to because other projects came into my life. And the next time I really was able to give it the focus that it was due was really at the end of 2022, when I had already gone through the experience of saying, I have these two things happening now. I have the commercial gallery and I have a nonprofit, and it feels like it needs to be one or the other, that I can't do both at the same time. I would talk to people about some of the projects that we had done, such as the residency or a more modest exhibition within the confines of a larger exhibition, for instance, all of which had been really exciting, really fun, and felt like they were the opportunity to highlight some artists that we maybe wouldn't have been able to otherwise. It felt like I had to choose one or the other. I felt like the work that I was doing, what really excited me, were the opportunities that Show Up was going to offer. I also felt like there was going to be more, let's say, avenues for financing and economic avenues with a nonprofit, because at least as I saw it, the way to finance a commercial gallery really was limited to selling work and taking a commission on the work that we were selling, particularly with the work that I wanted to show, which was really is the same work that I am showing now, more or less. We show work by underrepresented artists, emerging artists, very exciting work, highly talented artists, but often things that are really institutionally focused. So work that you're hopefully going to see in museums almost before you even to see it in museums. And this isn't work that necessarily everyone is going to want to have on their walls, but it is work that is very exciting and I think interesting and deserving of this opportunity to be shown. And we also are supporting artists and teaching them how to go from where they are currently in their career to getting to that point where they're ready to work with bigger galleries, or to work with a gallery, to working with the museum curators. Because I felt like we needed more ways to fund the work that we were doing, it felt like shifting the activity that was happening within the address that we already had and kind of putting everything into the nonprofit made sense. Now, for some people, I mean, even for me, it's hard because essentially an LLC is your own thing. Like, that was my business and was my brand. Now, when you have a nonprofit, that's something that doesn't belong to you. I can't say I'm the owner of it. No one owns a nonprofit. So you have to put your ego aside a little bit. But I felt like I, for the love of the art and for the love of what I do, was willing to put my ego aside and become, founder and the executive director of something that now more belongs to the community and really is run by a group of us, and hopefully more and more, and for the benefit of both artists and the public.
If I recall correctly, you made the shift in 2023 and launched your project in January 2024. So it has been approximately a year and a half since you've been running this nonprofit. What does exactly a nonprofit art gallery mean? Does it mean that it's a foundation? Is it more like association? Or is it like a company that you just can't make profit?
I think that one of the things that's challenging is those words mean different things in different languages and in different countries. When you're a nonprofit in the US, essentially the equity in the business, the money that's in the business, has to stay within the business. It has to be like reinvested. It can't be taken out as owner equity and put in my pocket, which is like if you're actually making money, which alas, is not the case for many art galleries, but for some of them, yes. So that's like the difference between, let's say, for profit and nonprofit. Then you have within the nonprofit, let's say, like lots of different ideas because you have the, let's say, foundation. In the US, a foundation is usually a nonprofit organization that is funded by one source and often is just re-granting out to other organizations, or that's my understanding of it. An association almost sounds more like what I would consider to be a co-op model, where you're not necessarily going to be what we call a 501c3, which is a title that comes from the tax code, which means that if you get donations, they can be written off, they can be deducted from the amount that you owe the government. I believe that that piece is where you can consider yourself to be almost like an extension of programming that the state would do if the state had the resources, and henceforth why you can take that money off of your taxes. Okay, that is that concept of you are owned by the state. That is why you answer in the United States to your attorney general of the state. You're technically owned by the people of the state. And that is also why you have a lot of rules and regulations. So that you have the 501c3. An association is more going to be like your co-op, where you're kind of like owned by a small group of individuals, but you're not a 501c3. So this is where I don't have quite as much knowledge. And we are a 501c3. And so feel free to donate to us. We always looking for new donors, new supporters, and I'm happy to talk to anyone who's interested to learn more about what we do, and also fall within that purview of being beholden to what the state wants to know about what we're doing.
So, to my understanding, combined what you just told me, the biggest differences between a nonprofit art gallery to the for-profit art gallery is number one, is owned by multiple people, owned by the community, by, let's say, the people, right? Like not by an individual business person. And its goal is to do something sustainable, social, and obviously the goal is not to profit from its activities. And on top of that, it can have tax benefits and it can receive donations, fundings from the government. So it's not just selling art to make money, but there are different ways to make money. Is there anything else, such as the way that you work, you operate in the art market, would be any difference? For example, the way you work with artists, the way you sell art, would the sales made from such activities considered a donation because it's not really a for-profit commission? So how does it work?
So what I would say is that, like, I'm not really in the business of selling art as like an art gallery. The sales that we make are kind of like an auxiliary or the result of our nonprofit activities. And we only have the work on sale because it is, in a way, mission critical, because our mission at its core is to support artists. And we do that by connecting artists to the local community, amplifying their voices, providing tools for them to succeed, and empowering them to explore their creativity. And one of the artists' tools that they absolutely need is money. They cannot make their art if they don't have money, okay? It feels like it would be doing a gross disservice to the artists to not put their work on sale if they want it on sale. The artists have 100% their own choice to put the art on sale or not when it is for show with us. And we consider ourselves more of a what they call a Kunsthalle model, which is a non-collecting art hall than a typical gallery. We are much more focused on, I would say, the educational and the community piece. And the exhibitions are really a educational platform rather than a financial driver. Now, the financial driver piece is like, I was speaking to someone already this morning. The business model we have set up is not like an ideal business model, because essentially we're saying we are relying on the generosity and goodness of the community plus grants in order to be able to move forward and keep doing what we're doing. I would not recommend anyone else make this their business model. I think that this is one of the mistakes, honestly, that I made, is not having a more solid business model as I went forward. And it's like, I don't know why I don't have a better business model. Like, I feel like I'm still looking for that sustainable programming, and we are, like, we have some of it, but it's just not 100% there. We are lucky that we have enough support that we are still moving forward. But the thing is that if you're reliant on funding, you don't know when that can go away, as things have been politically made evident recently in the United States. Your funding may be here one day and gone the next.
Your nonprofit is based in Boston. And is there any other nonprofit in the same area that are thriving, that are sustaining well? What model do they have?
The nonprofit world is really quite hard. Many of us are all in the same boat. If there were a perfect model, we'd probably all be sharing it. I think there are aspects of a lot of what we do that we can kind of take from each other and use and benefit from. I think that the work that Artists for Humanity does is amazing. They are located in South Boston, and they work with teenage artists. They have mentors and then they have mentees, and they produce art that they then sell, and also have services that they provide to the community that are paid services. Thinking of a nonprofit as any other business, even if it's a 501c3, how it's still a business with a mission aligned product or service that is for sale is the key. And I think that one of my issues was not understanding that as long as it was mission aligned, that I could sell something was my problem. As I kept on getting confused with what they call unrelated business income, and this fear that somehow if I actually sold anything, that I was going to get in trouble. Not understanding that as long as it was mission aligned, it's okay to make money. If your mission is supporting artists, that you're not, let's say, making money selling cars or something like that, that's like completely unrelated, because then the IRS is going to look at it and say, wait a second, why are you a 501c3? And you cannot take more than 30% of the commission.
Maybe, let me give a very bad example. Maybe you are female, helping female artist gallery, and you're selling men artists. Maybe that is like, oh, like not related. But I think generally, if your outcome is helping artists, then it would be considered, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of these things where it depends on the level of scrutiny and what you have registered with the IRS as your mission, right? Because you can put anything on your website. You can write, like, I only work with female artists. I'm not an accountant. I don't work for the IRS. So just this is my impression in this conversation. This is not to be taken as like to base your business or your accounting or what you put on your 990 on. All right? Just as my disclaimer. The IRS is going to look at what you have registered with them as to compare and contrast if they do an audit. And if and when they do an audit, that this sort of thing is going to come up. But I would highly recommend, this is an incredibly unregulated industry. It is only going to be to your benefit and to the benefit of your reputation to hold yourself to the highest standards possible, whatever those standards are. and go to the IRS with your new plans, which you can certainly do, and give them your new mission, for instance, if you're planning on showing, supporting all artists. Like, you can change your mind about things so that it all is encompassing, but I think it's all about that communication as well. So when a nonprofit in the United States is looking for an executive director, a large nonprofit, particularly like a museum, so we're essentially like basing ourselves on the model of a museum, a non-member museum. What they're looking for, number one, this is what they say at least, is someone who can fundraise. And so fundraising is the number one thing that you end up doing. And that is 80% from individuals, they say. And then the rest is going to be corporations and grants. So there's a lot of grant writing involved. So that means packaging what you're doing into a program or programs that you can then describe, write about, and upload to a variety of websites. Governmental, federal, or used to be federal, state, local, and then private for foundations and others. And then going to corporations and asking them for donations. A lot of times those end up being in-kind donations. Sometimes they can be financial. And then what is very surprising is you think to yourself, well, the places are giving out like $50,000 for grants, or like a bank and getting sponsored by like a bank, and then sponsored by like, I don't know, like your local department store, and then sponsored by this, Home Depot, and sponsored by Target and Gap or whoever. That like that's going to be who sponsors you, and then you're going to be set, right? And that's where all your money is going to come from. But research and I've done a variety of workshops. What I have been told, and what I am starting to see as well as we go through this process, is that a lot of it is going to be small donations from individuals is really what sustains most nonprofits.
Imagine if tomorrow I'm going to start my own nonprofit. What kind of profiles should I recruit? Like, what kind of people do I need on my team?
That is a great question. And I think that the first thing you do is you figure out how much you can do on your own, and you write a business plan. And then you need to come up with a strategic board, and people who are on that strategic board who are going to be willing to work and essentially be volunteers for you. In the United States, and here I'm speaking about my experience in Massachusetts, and so every state might be a little bit different. In Massachusetts, there is guidelines slash a law regarding who you need to have, how many people need to be on your board. So for instance, you need to have 3 people, and it needs to be the president, a clerk, and a treasurer. My understanding, again, the kind of like I am not a lawyer sort of disclaimer, is that these need to be 3 different people as well. So I was helping someone out, and we looked at her articles of organization, which is what you have to provide to the state along with these names and addresses of these individuals. And they had their name in all 3 places. And as far as I know, I'm not sure that you can do that. But it also means that you're going to be doing a hell of a lot of work, right? If you're trying to do all 3 jobs, that's no fun. So ideally, you would not be doing all of those things. And you would be looking for people who can support you. And I would say someone who kind of has an idea of how to, like budget, how to make a budget, perhaps. And usually someone who potentially has done some of this work before, either within the sector or maybe has worked in the nonprofit world before, because that can be incredibly helpful.
That is very similar to having an association in Spain. You need 3 individuals, 3 different persons, not the same. But there are practices that I've seen is that in order to have a more control over the organization or the association for good or for whatever personal purposes, I've seen people trying to recruit their own family, let's say their kids, adult kids, you need to be 18, their parents, their spouses, so that they can have a majority vote when they decide, let's say, certain directions. And none of those people can be paid a salary in Spain. I don't know in the States, but then it's just for the democratic voting process, not for money. Is there like also a similar practice in the States in order to have more say in this and you just onboard a bunch of relatives?
Well, what I would say is that if you are trying to create an association or a nonprofit where you are concerned about how much power you're going to have, start a single person business. Why are you starting a nonprofit in our association? That seems silly. I love my little dictatorship of, Beacon Gallery because I was in charge. I got to do whatever the hell I wanted. It was amazing. I didn't have to answer to anyone, and it was great. And this is what my father told me. He's like, "Why do you want a board?" He's like, "Do not start a nonprofit." He's someone who worked at a public company, and so he had experienced all the heartache of having a board. And having a board is hard because all of a sudden you have people, if you're in charge of it, who are questioning. So if you're in charge of it, if you're like the chairperson, you have people who are questioning that decision. And if you're the executive director, you have people questioning your decisions and how you're running the day to day. That's not fun. There is, I believe, a law in Massachusetts that you can't have family members who are on the board, and certainly an ethical indication that you should not have family members who are part of it. They cannot be paid. The compensation has to be decided by other people on the board. Like, you can't decide how much you're going to pay yourself for the job that you're doing, which is what the government does. The government there is like, I think we should all give ourselves raises. Boom. That's not how nonprofits work.
But you can't pay, in any case, yourself or other people for more than what you've made, right?
This is about covering payroll, which is part of your budget. You can't go into the negative. Like, you have to be able to cover payroll. That's one of the things every month or every 2 weeks. If you're paying an executive director, even if it's the founder, even if it's the person who's the president of the board, like, that's payroll. What I would recommend is using a payroll company. And then you have to pay your federal taxes, you have to pay your state taxes, unemployment, and everything like that. And it all gets deducted out, and you'll still get your W-2 at the end of the year in America, just like everybody else. And you pay your taxes, just like everyone, as if you are not the person who started it.
What if you don't have enough money to cover the payroll? In this case, what would you do?
You go bankrupt. You have to close down. I mean, either like you literally have to go and you would have to get a loan. You have to find someone to give you a loan. Like like you're out of business. If you don't have any money, you can't function. So it's the same as any other case. Like, who's going to work for you if you can't pay them?
How much money do you need to start a 501c3?
So you have to apply for a 501c3 from the IRS. You're not going to get it, and sometimes it takes years to get it. The application to start a nonprofit, I believe, is something that changes from state to state. You do have businesses that will take your money and will apply on your behalf to these things for a fee. I don't think it costs hardly anything to apply for the 501c3. To start a business in Massachusetts cost, like an LLC, cost about $500. To start a nonprofit was dangerously inexpensive at about, I'm going to say like $35. It may not be that anymore. I could be wrong on like the exact amount, but it was significantly less expensive. And so it makes it a lot easier to start a nonprofit. It's certainly a lot cheaper, right? But then you have all these other, like, what you pay back. You essentially like save the money, but then you're paying back in kind of time and process in terms of things that you have to, regulate later.
How about every year? How much is the cost to maintain it? Like paying a CPA, or, I assume that not everyone can file for their own nonprofit organization. That is a like a bigger job than just filing for yourself, right?
It depends on how big it is. Up to $50,000 a year, you only have to file the 990N, which is a 990 postcard. Very, very simple. The US government encourages nonprofits up to, and here I'm talking about 501c3s. And so the regulations for nonprofits as a whole probably is different. So I can really only speak to my experience, but I'm going to guess it's even less regulated. It's only once you get to about $50,000 and above that you have to file, your 990 easy, and then at $200,000. I'm not sure when it switches for easy to the regular 990. We start having to have like audited books, and that's where it can get, Mo, to your point, more more expensive, and where you have to really like hire someone to audit, an independent auditor and everything. Maybe I'm just making it sound hard because it's like we're just coming out of tax season for April 15th. and, and it's always a struggle. And so it's all fresh in my memory, still ongoing. We filed for an extension. We're still in the books.
As an artist, is it more beneficial working with a nonprofit gallery or working with a for-profit gallery, like to build one's career? Let's say if one artist was approached by two distinctive galleries and one is for-profit, one is nonprofit in the same area, if this person must choose one, which one would be the better choice for an emerging artist?
Well, I'm always going to say choose me for it, but no, honestly, a commercial galleries are always going to have a cachet to them that is really important for artists. I think that a lot of ways in which nonprofit art spaces are run, um, can end up being very unprofessional and different from how we personally run our space, which is just like a commercial gallery, kind of like a to the level of like that we're aspiring to be like a museum, like White Cube Gallery, like that highest level, so that artists are having that experience. It's one of the things that honestly I think makes us unique. It's part of like that educational experience of going through this with us and kind of identifying like what they are looking to get out of this, that experience of showing with us, of having an exhibition, and then really measuring that and moving on. So I would always, not always say, but like in most cases, I would say you need to evaluate what your options are. And if you have options, right? I mean, that's always amazing if you have a choice between two spaces and what kind of show it is, how many artists. And that's the other thing. It's like, is it a group show versus a two-person show? Is it a vanity gallery where you're going to have to pay versus not pay? And kind of go from there. But commercial galleries, in terms of like the name recognition and what they might offer you on your resume down the line, that's worth thinking about.
For a collector, what are the benefits collecting from a nonprofit art gallery?
I think wherever you find your art that you love as a collector, buy it from there. As long as you feel like you can trust the people who are there and you love the art, I want to say like, and you feel like you can get in touch with the artist, but sometimes, that's just not the case. Like we all have pieces in our houses that we might have bought on like vacation from some like random shack. Don't let that keep you from buying something that you love, honestly. Someone made it and they deserve for you to have that piece if you love it. So I would say go follow the artists you love wherever they are. I don't always love when artists choose to like put their art on the wall of like a coffee shop, frankly. But if you love an artist and they're on the wall of a coffee shop and you want to buy that painting, like don't let that stop you. Like who cares? Unless it has a big coffee stain on it.
Does it make you feel happier, like changing, turning it 180 degree and go for the cause?
One thing I've learned about myself in the last 7 years is that I have ADHD, and it has changed my life learning that and becoming someone who's medicated for ADHD. And in learning about ADHD, one of the things that I learned is that we love to do things the most complicated way possible. I essentially like started a gallery and the gallery was doing well. And then I essentially thought to myself, evidently, how can I make this more difficult? Why don't I turn it into a nonprofit? And like I thought of that and I was just very amused because I love what I've done. I think that this is that next step, absolutely, in the spirit of what Beacon Gallery was always meant to be. We were doing social impact work. I wanted to have these shows that really grabbed people, that have maybe a controversial element or that make you think. I wanted to platform artists whose work, due to just how capitalism is and how the structural nature of the art market just doesn't get onto the walls of commercial galleries, and wanted to show emerging artists. And I feel like I found like the perfect way to do it in this amazing venue, with Show Up. And I am really happy with how I've done this. I also feel like I've learned so much more about simply how to run a business rather than like a single person LLC is one thing. And this feels like a huge step towards in that complexity of managing a team where I now have people working with me, managing a board, and really collaboration. That's one of the pieces I absolutely love about this, is that like Boston has so many amazing arts nonprofits, and it's been such an honor to get to work with other individuals in this field, so many creative people, so many wonderful teams, places that have been around for decades, all working towards reinforcing and enriching Boston's cultural landscape. It's been fantastic.
Is that physically possible for someone with or without ADHD to run a company and a nonprofit in the same domain, like simultaneously?
Essentially, I would say like yes and no. I mean, I was constantly neglecting the nonprofit. It was simply that the programming, let's say like 80% of the programming during the year would be Beacon Gallery programming, and then like 20% would be Show Up programming. So it's like kind of like not physically possible.
Yeah. How many years did you run the two projects in parallel?
Oh, only like two, I want to say.
And then you made the switch.
Yeah, and then we did the switch. Like we did a show for Karen Tab called "Humanity Is Not a Spectator Sport." It was a solo exhibition, but then we decided that we were going to do a smaller exhibition within the exhibition for a group of 7 artists, because this was about making space for other people and for underrepresented artists. And so that was run as a kind of like with under the auspices of the nonprofit, if that makes sense. So that would be the only time that they were like almost physically overlapping. The gallery is being funded and like the rent is being paid by the commercial gallery, if you want to get down to kind of like the nuts and bolts of it.
And what kind of person is more suitable to run nonprofit? Am I made for a nonprofit or am I made for a company? How would I know? How would I find out?
I mean, I think the best thing can be before starting a nonprofit is probably to actually work for one, because you'll realize that you're going to be asked to do things outside the scope of your role constantly. So you have to be ready to kind of be a Swiss Army knife of a person. I think that people who work in nonprofits are stretched very thin, and it requires a lot of resiliency or a lot of resilience. And that I think gets to a lot of people quite quickly, or gets to a lot of people eventually. If you're ambitious in terms of making a lot of money, it's not the place for you. There's just not much money in most nonprofits. I think there's a lot of opportunity to grow in terms of quickly moving to the top if you're good at what you do, because I think that there is a lot of turnover in nonprofits and a lot of opportunity to kind of like try out different positions. It is something where it lacks stability at the same time because of that. So I think there needs to be, comfort with like ambiguity, comfort with that like lack of stability in terms of like what projects you're working on and who you're collaborating with. And I think a real passion. I think that's important to maybe figure out what cause you're willing to give that extra like 10 to 20% to beyond what you're asked to do. And I'm not saying that you have to give it, but I think that having that like emotional resource that's kind of keep that fire burning inside of you when you're like down to the end of what you have left to give, so that there is something and you haven't completely burnt yourself out because you know that you're doing it for a reason, is going to help keep you there, as opposed to feeling so burnt out. You know, if you're working on like maintaining model ships somewhere, but what you really love is working with kittens, you're not going to have that. You're going to be like, forget these model ships. I want to set them all on fire. Right. And once you get down to like working the gala and it's 11 o'clock and you're having to clean up because everybody's asked to clean up at the end of the gala, gathering tablecloths or something and pushing and taking the folding chairs down. You know, that sort of stuff sucks. Like, no one wants to be doing that, right? But if you're doing it because it's like for the kittens, so that they go to good homes and they're so cute and they're like, there's a whole crate of kittens in the corner going meow, and you just see them and you're like, I will put the chairs away for you, my dear little kittens. Like, it just gives you that extra little bit that you still have that ember burning inside of you for the kittens.
What does success look like for a nonprofit? Is that money? Is that fame? Is that the recognition? Is that funding? Is that the dreams come true for others?
It is different for everybody, I think. So if you out there are watching, your success versus a nonprofit success may be different. Inherently, what success means for a nonprofit is fulfilling its mission, right? So when you're writing the mission statement, the idea is like everything you do is supposed to fulfill that mission. And so think about like what your mission is and then like success is fulfilling that mission. However, there are going to be auxiliary things that need to happen in order to fulfill that mission and kind of to keep fulfilling it, such as like needing to minimize staff turnover, being able to pay the staff, being able to stay in business over a certain number of years. I think that success for you as an individual, if you're starting a nonprofit, changes on a year to year or like a scope basis. So oftentimes you're going to want to start with like your, let's say, 1 year plan, your 3 year plan, 5 year plan, 10 year plan, looking at that like short, medium, and long term planning for a business, and maybe think about that for yourself as well. I honestly ask people, especially artists, like, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? And thinking about like when you like that first thing that flashes in your mind, like, don't dismiss that. It's like if you see it and it's like your stuff on a wall, and for an artist, I'm like in a museum, it's like, how do you get there? When you think about your business, how do you get there? And that's a success as well. So it's also tied in with ambition, I think.
But the economy is getting worse and worse. The market is tougher and tougher. So maybe just a flash of your dream, but with like a 50% discount. Because maybe, you know, it with this current economy and the finite problem of world's resources and the trade wars and physical actual wars, and it's maybe possible that our dreams are dreams and it's more realistic as long as you survive. You made another year, your organization is still here standing. That's already a big achievement because not everyone gets that.
Oh, 100%. I think it's important to understand that it's like life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? You will have like what you want to happen, and then you'll have like what actually happens. I think that acknowledging the impact and like the what's wonderful about what you've actually done is a really good practice. It is something I'm absolutely terrible at, by the way. This is something that I am working on. But If you just sit there and go like, well, there's a war, so I guess I'm just not going to make any plans. That is like not an empowering attitude. You can be pragmatic. Like I'm not sitting here being like, I want to expand, show up to be in every European capital. It's like, you want to have your SMART goals.
Just 3 days ago, we had a major power outage in Spain, in whole Iberia Peninsula, and other EU countries. When you say empowerment, I'm like, power. That's why probably I had this glooming view on this world, but
And that's the whole thing, right? Is like that's a great example of, you think you might want to go now versus where you think you might want to go in the future can be very, very different based on how your circumstances change. What I wanted like before I had kids and now with my kids at a certain age and like their needs is completely different. I mean, every time you change countries, I had plans when I lived in one country and then and then we had to move with like no notice, and like then I had to like reinvent myself, and I would also say don't be afraid to reinvent yourself and to let go of like where your business plan starts and then where you start seeing like action and flow and traction. Like don't get stuck in that sense of like it has to be this because it started being this. It's better to just pay attention to what's working. And there's success to be found there too.
thank you very much. Thank you for spending time with us. And I hope our conversation would repeat next month on a different subject.
I love that.
And thank you also for watching. See you in the next video. Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you for watching.